Hey everyone, Matt here with CheckView. One question we get asked quite often about is how you can test conditional logic on your forms with CheckView. And when I'm referring to conditional logic, I'm referring to when one form field is selected and that usually makes some sort of action on another form field. Probably the most common example is if one selection is made on one form field, it will show or hide another field. Right now, CheckView doesn't do a great job at auto-generating test flows with this conditional logic. Although the team's working really hard to make auto-generated tests work with conditional logic. In the meantime though, I wanted to make a video showing you how you can test conditional logic by adjusting your test steps in CheckView. So today I've got up on the screen a WS form with some conditional logic. This would also work with Gravity, Ninja, any of the other form plugins. And this is using just a default WordPress install. So the conditional logic here is on the product type. This is a window coverings quote, so it of course asks for your basic information, which CheckView can fill out. But when you go to pick the product type, if I say select shades, it then reveals that you need to choose a hardware type and it is required. If it wasn't a required field, then CheckView would just essentially not fill it out and it would still go through. But because it's required, we have to adjust the test steps because CheckView is not going to find this field by default. So I've got here, it will choose, let's say, inside mount or outside mount. So when you pick outside mount, it's going to ask you for an accessory that you want to choose. So we're going to use this workflow essentially as the user that we want to work through: shades, outside mount, wand. I've already added this website to just my CheckView account here. When I go to add a test flow, it's going to, of course, pull up the default WS forms that's installed, where it can be auto-generated. I could also start from scratch, which would be using a custom test flow right away. Now, I think for most of you guys, you're probably going to try to use the auto-generated test when it's going to fail. And CheckView will attempt to create the steps and save them. FYI, sometimes it doesn't and you have to start from scratch anyways. But we're gonna go ahead and assume that I tried to run this and it failed. So I'm gonna say request a quote. I'm gonna put it on the page that we have up here, and I'm gonna go ahead and have it auto-generate the test. One thing to keep in mind is that in this case, it does get a few fields in, so it will save a few steps that we have to manually do, but not a lot, because it's going to basically fail on this field right here, and that's where the steps are going to stop. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause this video real quick while it creates the test flow, runs through the preview, and then when initialization fails, we'll go ahead and set up the custom steps. All right, so it's gone ahead and failed as we expected. So if I click on that, it's going to make a way we can either edit the steps, retry the test, or view the initialization errors. Now I'm gonna assume we don't know why it failed, just to show you guys what that looks like. I highly recommend using this video most of the time when your initialization fails. So if I click that, it shows how far it gets. Now it can be a little misleading. For example, it shows that it made it to the shades field, but you'll notice it skipped over our conditional logic form fields, which is really why it looks like it's failing at the database submission level, because it's just not submitting it. You can see, you have to watch the video and you'll see, oh, I didn't create the hardware type field is what the bot's basically saying for us. And that's what we expected in this case. So if I hit the back button here, we're gonna hit edit steps now. And like I said, it's gonna try to save the steps it already had. I could also adjust the field values if I wanted, like for first name and last name, it wasn't able to identify those. So we could adjust these if we wanted to while we're in here so it matches. We've got, though, it made it through the email. It's got that it selected the shades, and then it assigned the paragraph for the comments field. It has where it clicks to submit, it checks the submission, and it asserts the email was received. So essentially we need to go right here and we need to go ahead and get these missing steps in here. So in this case, it's already picked shades for us, so we're good there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a new step after shades, and it's going to be a select similar to the one above. Select is typically going to be used when you're using drop downs. And we need to pull up the dev tools in Chrome. And again, you can really do this however you prefer. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the actual input here, and you wanna make sure you're on the main input, not like an option. We wanna be on this and definitely don't wanna be on the label. So it's gonna be this one right here, which has a unique identifier, which is great. So I can just click and copy the selector here. And we're going to use this to target. All right. And then we need to put in a value, which I want to use outside mount here. So you're not actually going to put in like an option. And you want to make sure the capitalization, everything's the same, or it might fail. So now I've got this one set up. Looks good. I'm going to add another step up after this. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to pick a different ID. Click here. Go ahead and copy that selector in this case, and we're going to use the wand as the value. So now I basically have caught the bot up with the things that it was missing, the fields it was missing, and we already went through and made sure everything looked good. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go ahead and go back, and there is no preview test since it's now test flow. So I'm going to go and run a test, and this may take a minute. So I'm going to go and pause the video, and then we'll see how it does. All right, so it went ahead and finished, and you can see it passed, which is great. I can see all the form fields and steps it went through. I always like to check the video after I create a new test flow, even though it passes, to make sure everything looks good. It's picking the shades, it's picking outside mount wand, and it's filling all this in, and it submits it, and it confirmed that the submission went in correctly and that the email to our test inbox worked. So we've got this one all set, and it's just gonna run at the executed scheduled time. So guys, hopefully this is really helpful on explaining how you can adjust your steps in order to handle conditional logic. Again, it's relatively simple if you understand how to use selectors. If you don't, definitely check out our documentation. We have some great information on how to use selectors. You can just use the free tools in Chrome to select those selectors, use the IDs, and get this working for conditional logic. Of course, if you have any questions or you get stuck, feel free to contact us at our support desk, and we're happy to help.